Hello students, so this is chapter 14. We're going to be talking about families in later life. Some of the objectives we're going to be covering today is we're going to talk about the graying of America, grandparenthood, current issues facing seniors, long-term care, death with dignity laws, and we'll finish up talking about some aging theories. So in terms of aging, let's go over a few different terms and definition. The term old is a social construct. It means different things to different people. What we may perceive of being old in the United States may be something that's very different in another country that may not have as long as a life expectancy. What is considered old today may look very different than 200 years ago. So basically it's just considered a social construct that we as humans have created. It is subjective, it's relative, and it's really kind of constantly changing. Here in the United States, we would probably identify somebody as being quote-unquote old, as being a senior citizen getting to the age of retirement. Gerontology. Gerontology is a social science. You can get your bachelor's degree in it, you can get your master's, you can get your PhD. And what it does, it studies the aging population. It studies senior citizens. It takes a look at the biological aspect of aging, the psychological aspect of aging, and some of the social issues or social aspects of growing older. We categorize people who are senior citizens into three major categories. We have the young old, that's 65 to 74. They're around the age of retirement, but a lot of them are still working and usually pretty high functioning physically and cognitively. Old is 75 to 84, so this is going to be around the time period that people may be struggling with some physical ailments or some cognitive issues. The primary physical ailment that's happening around this age, and even among young old, is going to be arthritis. The oldest old are going to be those that are age 85 and older. We take a look at this chart here. It takes a look at the projections of those 65 and older among various races. It goes all the way back to 2010 and what's projected up into 2050. And I think the main thing you can see here, back in 2010, about 80% of those 65 and older are going to be Caucasians or whites, 7% Latino, 9% African American, 3% Asian, and then 2% other races. So as we're moving forward into the future, it kind of shows that all other races and ethnicities, that those overall percentages are going to be going up, while Caucasians, their overall percentages are going to be going down. There's a lot of different factors that are playing into this. Other races and ethnicities have higher birth rates, and so their population numbers are increasing, while Caucasians, they're experiencing a negative birth rate, and so more Caucasians or whites are dying than actually being born. So it's going to show that our country is going to become even more racially and ethnically diverse. Let's talk about the difference between lifespan and life expectancy. Lifespan is the total number of years that a person can possibly live. It's around 120 years. Now, most people don't make it that long. So life expectancy is the average number of years that somebody's going to be expected to live. So in the United States, that's somewhere around 79 years old. That's calculating both males and also females. Our life expectancy rises as our education levels and income tends to rise. We tend to, as people become more educated, they tend to be more aware of their health. They have higher income, so better quality of food. And since they're making more money, they usually have better health insurance and they go to the doctor more. Pretty much across the board, women outlive men among all ethnic groups, and we can pretty much see this globally around the world. Women tend to take better care of themselves. They don't abuse drugs and alcohol as much. They have stronger social networks. They're more likely to go to counseling or therapy than men are. There's just a lot of different variables that play into that. That's why they tend to live longer. In this chart here, it takes a look at the number of persons 65 and older, all the way from the year 1900 to what's projected in the future of 2060. These numbers are all in the millions. So what the main thing you can see here is that our aging population is increasing pretty dramatically. So in the year 1900, there were around 3 million people in America that were 65 and older. So the vast majority of people were middle-aged and younger. So as we're moving into the future of 2040 and in 2060, we see that those numbers are going dramatically up from 3 million at 1900 to 80 million to 94 million in 2060. So it's referred to as the graying of America. People are living a whole lot longer, and because we're having fewer children, the birth rates are going down, so there's fewer younger people and there are more older people, and that's going to be what we're going to be seeing in our society moving forward into the future. The oldest age, as we mentioned earlier, are those 85 and older. They are the fastest growing age population in the country. In the year 1900, there were only about 100,000 of people 85 and older in the United States. Today, it's over 6 million and climbing. Centenarians, these are going to be people that are 100 years old or older, hence the word century, centenarians. 85% of them are women. So, as we've mentioned many times in this course, women outlive men, so only about 15% of men are going to be living to about 100 years old or older. So, as I mentioned, the older population is rising while the younger population is decreasing, and you can actually see that right here. So back in 1900, 40% of our population was minors under the age of 18, and a very small percentage was 65 and older, only about 4%. So as we're moving very close into 2030, you can see that the aging population, the population that are minors from 0 to 17 years old is going down. Our birth rates are going down. And while those 65 and older, those overall percentages are going up. And so in the very, very near future, there's actually going to be more people, percentage-wise, 65 years old and older than those under the age of 18. Grandparents are having fewer grandchildren basically because people are having few children. So if the birth rates are going down, that's going to affect not only how many kids that parents are raising, but also how many grandkids that grandparents actually have. Families are also geographically dispersed all over the country. So the connection that grandparents and grandkids have are not the same as it was a couple hundred years ago, whenever people didn't have cars, and most generations, they lived within 20 miles of each other. So about 1.5 million children are being raised exclusively by grandparents alone. And as you can see from this chart here, over 50% of them, or about 750,000, are going to be white. Next would be African American at 25%, then Latino, and then other races and ethnic groups. Some issues that senior citizens deal with is one issue that some of them may deal with is depression. That's not the same thing as loss or feeling sad. Those are common, normal human emotions. Depression is the mental disorder of persistent sadness and a loss of interest in everyday activities. So when it gets to a point where this sense of loss is lasting for weeks and months, it can be clinically diagnosed as depression. So there's a lot of loss as people get older. So depression rates will increase as people get older, but not everybody's going to experience depression. Their children are grown, they may be retired, so they're not getting that socialization. They may not be interacting with their children very much because they're grown. If they're widowed, that means their significant other has passed away. They may be dealing with any type of physical issues or cognitive types of issues. Unfortunately, they may be dealing with isolation or lack of socialization. If they're not able to drive anymore, they may be spending a lot of time at home alone, and sometimes their friends and family members have passed away. Those seniors that are physically active, mentally active, and socially active will experience less depression, so it's really important and critical to stay as active as possible. Another issue that some seniors may experience, but definitely not all, is Alzheimer's disease. It's a form of dementia. It's the most common form of dementia, but not everybody who ages and gets older and lives to be an old age is going to get Alzheimer's disease because it is not a normal aspect of the brain. Slow, and basically what the Alzheimer's does, it slowly starts to deteriorate and actually shrink the brain. Little plaques and tendrils get in the way of the neurons and firing and communicating with the rest of the body. There are lower rates of Alzheimer's disease among those that are educated and physically active, so it's very important to take care of your body and take care of your brain. There are higher rates of Alzheimer's disease among women. The main reason is because women live longer than men. The older that you get, statistically, the older you get, the more likely you are to contract Alzheimer's disease and have that. The rates are rising mainly because people are living longer. So today, 6+ million Americans are diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. By the year 2050, it's going to more than double at 13 million Americans. So we're going to see this more and more in our daily lives. Other issues that seniors deal with is work and retirement. Retiring is basically a pretty new concept. 100 years ago or longer, people did not retire. They just worked until they couldn't work anymore. But now people are investing their money in the stock market and saving their money, and so it's fairly a new concept just over the last 100 years that people will stop working at a certain point. A couple of things that have allowed people to stop working and really kind of enjoy later life is things like Social Security. It's a supplemental income that people can get starting around the age of 65, 67. This was started back in 1935 under Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal to help pull us out of the Great Depression. In 1965, Medicare was pushed through, and Medicare is going to be a type of health insurance for those that are 65 and older. So for people getting Social Security and Medicare, it kind of helps pay for those bills and those expenses, and it makes it a little bit easier for people to actually transition into retirement. However, a lot of seniors 65 years old and older, they are still working, either because they want to or because they have to. A lot of people 65 and older, they're in good physical health, they're in good cognitive health. So you can see these percentages going up. 11% of seniors 65 and older were working. In the year 2000, it was 14%. Today, it's over 20%. So people are living longer and they are working longer. Because they're working longer, we have to make sure that senior citizens are not experiencing any type of discrimination in the workforce. Ageism is discrimination based on age. This is more of a common type of issue in individualistic societies like the United States, where a lot of our value, it comes across, a lot of our value, our status is tied into how productive we actually are. This is much less common in collectivistic societies, places like the Middle East and also Asia, where seniors are often revered and highly respected for their experience in life and their wisdom that they can pass down from one generation to the next. In 1967, the Age Discrimination Employment Act was put in place to protect employment of those 40 years old and older, to help prevent people that are middle-aged and older from experiencing ageism in the workplace and prevent them from being discriminated against during the hiring process or even the promotion process. Another issue that a lot of people will deal with as they get older is widowhood. A widower is going to be a man who has lost his wife. They tend to have fewer social networks, higher rates of substance abuse and depression. They may struggle with the housework, especially if that was something that his wife did. But they're also more likely to remarry. The dating pool is much larger for men than women. A widow, they tend to deal with widowhood. Females who have lost their husbands, they tend to deal with this a lot better than men. They have stronger social networks. They take better care of themselves physically. They may have an issue of living in poverty if their husband was the primary breadwinner, hence the term feminization of poverty. And they're also less likely to remarry. We mentioned how women outlive men, and so the dating pool and the marrying pool for women is much lower than it is for men. Another major issue is going to be social isolation. Take a look at this chart here, and it's taking a look at men Men are more likely to be living with their spouse because women outlive men, so they are less likely to be socially isolated. They're also less likely to go into an institution like a nursing home or an assisted living facility. Their wives are usually there to take care of them. This is typically not the case for women, where about 35% of women are living alone compared to 20% of men. So women are more likely to be socially isolated, and they're also more likely to go into an institution compared to men simply because they live so much longer. So caregiving and elder abuse. Men are, like I mentioned, likely to have their wife as a caregiver, which is good, help to take care of them. Women, on the other hand, are less likely to have their husbands as a caregiver, more likely that their daughter is going to be taking care of them. As I mentioned, they're also more likely to go into a long-term care facility. Elder abuse is a very serious issue, and it is something that can be anonymously reported. And this usually doesn't happen from family members, from strangers, but more likely statistically from family members that may be experiencing caregiver stress. Nobody else is coming in to help relieve them, and sometimes people have a breaking point, a stress level, and it can actually evolve into elder abuse. That's why it's really important to make sure that if somebody is taking care of mom or dad, that other people are going in there to help relieve them from that very stressful and high responsibility. Those who have serious addictions, alcohol addictions, drug addictions, or financial problems, that's also going to increase the chance of elder abuse, especially those that are experiencing dementia. It can be a lot easier to financially take advantage of an elderly person if they're experiencing dementia. The number one type of elder abuse is financial abuse. And like I said, if abuse is being suspected of an adult or an elderly person, that you can anonymously contact the Adult Protective Services or Elderly Protective Services, and there's a link there that you can use in order to do that. So let's talk a little briefly about different types of long-term care. First off, the term activities of daily living are also known as your ADLs. If you ever work with seniors in any type of capacity, I'm sure you've heard of ADLs. Your activities of daily living include things like your ability to dress yourself, feed yourself, toilet, medication management, walking, those types of things. So the more activities of daily living that you can actually do, the more independent you are. The less that you can do, the more dependent you are. So as you lose the ability to do activities of daily living, it increases your chances of possibly needing some care or going into an institution. Adult daycares are just kind of like child daycares. You know, it's somewhere where those 65 and older can go to a senior sitter or adult daycare for a few hours during the day, socialize, maybe eat some lunch and play some games, and then come back home. In-home assistance is sometimes it's paid through Medicaid for lower income families, but sometimes it's also out of pocket if you don't qualify for Medicaid. So this is whenever a caregiver comes into your home and will assist you with various things. It could be medication management, or taking you to the doctor, helping to clean up the house, or other types of services. So once you leave your home, you may be in a situation where you can no longer safely stay at home, or maybe it gets too expensive because you need 24-hour care. So they do have assisted living facilities, and this is where you'll go into this facility. Most of them are not Medicaid waiver. Some are Medicaid waiver, but most of them are going to be private pay. It can be very expensive, several $1,000s. And so if you're struggling with activities of daily living or some cognitive issues, you can go there, and you'll have your own apartment or own room, and they'll give you 3 meals a day, and somebody will help you with medication management. There's an activities director to do activities. And if you start to have more serious issues, both physically and maybe even cognitively, there may come a point where assisted living facilities are not able to give you the quality of care that you actually need, and you may need to go into more of a medical type of facility known as a nursing home or a nursing facility. Nursing facilities, most of them do take Medicaid. If you don't qualify for Medicaid, then other types of insurance may be applied, like long-term care insurance or simply paying out of pocket. Let's talk about the differences between grief and bereavement. Grief is an emotional response to loss, very natural. Bereavement is the process of going through any type of loss throughout your life. It could be the loss of your independence, could be loss of a job, could be loss of a significant other or a family member. And there are different stages of grief, and people grieve in different ways, and for some people, grief may not take as long as other people's, and there's really not a time limit on grief. So you may experience certain characteristics like denial, just not believing that it's actually happening. You may be very angry, which is very understandable. There may be some bargaining, trying to bargain with people or even with God about the situation. You may experience depression, but on the tail end of grief and loss, when you get to the point of accepting what has actually happened, that's whenever you tend to feel a lot better. But for some people, it can take months, if not years, to get to the point of acceptance. Sometimes people may be struggling with severe illnesses. They may have a terminal illness, could be cancer or HIV or other types of ailments. And so there are more and more states very slowly that are starting to institute what's known as death with dignity laws. This is basically physicians-assisted suicide. In order to qualify for this, every state is different. Not all states allow it. Usually you have to have a diagnosis of living 6 months or less to actually qualify for this. You also have to be cognitively aware to make this decision on your own. And so this decision can't be made by other people. Even if they have a medical power of attorney, you have to make this decision on your own. So you go through the process of qualifying for this. There's probably psychological evaluations. And usually what happens is they'll give you some sort of drink or some sort of pills to swallow, and it allows you to very peacefully pass away. This is legal in several states up north. The southern states are not really on board. The southern states tend to be more religious, and so they're really not on board yet, but more and more northern states are starting to allow this. The largest demographic that participate in death with dignity laws are going to be whites 65 and older that are college educated, and the most common diagnosis is going to be cancer. We're going to finish up here taking a look at some aging theories. One is called disengagement theory and one is activity theory. If you ever take a gerontology course, you're going to hear about these theories as well. So disengagement theory is the idea that it is mutually beneficial for senior citizens and young people to separate in society, that elderly people should leave the workplace, that they should go hang out with other senior citizens, and they should kind of be away from society and kind of hang out with other elderly people, allowing the young people to kind of move into those positions, those work positions, and those social positions. A lot of people believe that this really creates an idea in promoting ageism, discrimination against seniors. If you have this idea that they just need to kind of go away and allow the young people to move in, it's really creating an idea of separation, and it can create a perception that senior citizens may not have a whole lot of value anymore. So most sociologists, psychologists, and even gerontologists, they believe in what's known as activity theory. They argue that senior citizens should absolutely not disengage from society. They need to continue to work. They need to continue to socialize. They need to be physically active. They need to be around young people so they can pass down that knowledge and that experience and that wisdom to the younger generation. And by them being socially active, physically active, psychologically active, that this allows them to have a higher quality of life, to live longer, and to really kind of enjoy living. So most professionals are going to believe that being active throughout the course of your life is the healthiest thing to do.